that's just not gonna be, it's gonna be a long term.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, like, we could go this next summer and it'd still be,
Oh, it's still be.
Yeah, because they got a little town to it.
How's school, Shelley?
it's great. I'm on the downhill of the first quarter, so.
Yay.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You can hang with that sister.
Yep. Great
I'm thinking
fun.
about you sometimes, I said, "Miss,
Oh,
you probably need to want to come up with 2 or 3 at once." Not really.
same time, you know. Have them all at once, not do it again.
That's it.
Wait 10 years apart, it takes you 30 years to get your life back.
See, nope, can't do that either.
That's what I did. Yeah.
Not on my watch.
You're 50 before you get time to do something.
Hey. Your wallet's right here.
Oh. It's so lovely.
There's sometimes like, oh, I'm not even there.
Yeah.
Speaking of, do you have cash? I forgot to check. You got cash? I think I have cash.
No, I have some cash.
Okay, good. Can you give it to me? I'm serious, I need it.
I like how she posed that as a question as if he had a choice. That was amazing.
My hand out.
Well played.
I don't have.
Well played.
Well, I have 20, you have 5. I think
Wow.
I have 20.
Marriage.
I think I have 20. Thank you.
Marriage.
You got off easy.
Honestly.
Yeah, right. It's the highest bill in the solution.
He's got to stop at, he's got to stop at the ATM and pay the fees and go.
All right, let's see. Not working. Oh.
Nice and big.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jump the track too, man. There you go. Is that better?
Is that cabbage?
That is better.
That's so cool. Oh, but I see now. Can you eat them?
Everybody's all right tonight?
They're cute. I think
Yes. I am grab my glass.
Oh, I'm sorry, are you okay, honey? You okay?
Oh, I gotta fix those chairs.
John.
John, long section in John tonight, everybody's very familiar with. John, the Gospel of John does not pick up on this for those that are listening far, far away. John 15 is where we're going to start. John doesn't pick up on or develop as a subtext the whole conflict that's going on in the other 3 Gospels. John is more zeroed in on what Jesus is teaching in his final moments with his disciples. Matthew, Mark, and Luke pick up on the fact that there's some conflict going on. It's staged with the whole thing with Judas, with Peter, the language that's used. We're left by the Synoptic writers realizing that there's a lot going on here that the disciples really don't understand, and they're really not willing to accept. And so we have the whole scene with Peter. You know, he's just all over the place, kind of wanting to know he's going to defend Jesus and he's going to die for Jesus, and the reason why is because none of this really is adding up yet. That this is the kind of Messiah that is come and that is going to save them. They're still looking for what they've been taught to look for all their life. I mean, this is it. And everything that they've witnessed, everything that Jesus has done that has been counter to their understanding, they've been able to accept because it is so remarkable and so wonderful. And he's teaching with authority, and the miracles that he performs runs the gamut of everything, from raising dead ones to life to providing sight back, and lame walking. They accept all of that because it is a remarkable occurrence that God is providing this in this man Jesus. But they're still holding on to the old idea. And so the conflict is there, and we dig into a little bit of what Jesus is teaching along the way, but John does the best job. John is zeroed in on what Jesus wants his disciples to absorb in this last moment. He knows the conflict. He's already, the other Gospels describe it, but he's not willing to give into it. He's not going to let them wallow in their misunderstanding. He's pushing on with them, and he wants them to understand. So these are key passages because we find ourselves in the same place sometime. We find ourselves conflicted. We find ourselves not sure. We find ourselves expecting one thing and getting another. And this often happens in our faith walk with Jesus. At least it does for me. I can't speak for everybody. But I talk to a good number of people. Most of them these days I find in jail. The people that are there that are believers that find themselves in the place they're in, they are discombobulated about life and what to believe, which is a great thing. To me, that's a great thing. When someone's able to get to that point of honesty about where they are with Jesus, then they're able to hear what he's got to say. And this is some of that we find in this Gethsemane discourse. We looked at the first part of it last week, and we're going to look at 15 and hopefully all of 16 tonight. It's a lot. And we're all familiar with these passages. We use them a lot in study. We use them a lot around Easter time. But these are important passages because they illustrate for us in a really organic way, no pun intended. He's talking about vines and branches here. But he is illustrating for us in the sense that this is who we can be if we actually do this. We get to be something quite remarkable in the world. And he's trying to get his disciples to understand that. And so we get to understand it. Now, we've got 2,000 years to help us understand it. So we still have to kind of put ourselves in their place. Okay, so they're walking. It says on the way to the garden. There's the Mount of Olives there. And they must be near or walking through a vineyard. Because this whole thing rises up out of, the illustration is here, and you would think he is using it because of their location. But anyway, Jesus tells them, he says, I am the true vine. Why does he say true? He's growing, and for centuries, Israel, the nation, was represented as a vine with grapes on it. We talked about this before. The temple doors had them engraved in there and other places. But he's saying that I'm the true vine. There is a vine that you can go look at on the building, but that's not the true vine. It doesn't even represent the true vine. I'm the true vine. Okay. Again, this is an idea that they weren't raised with. Israel was the fruit of God. But now Jesus is claiming, no, the fruit of God comes from me. I'm the true vine. And my Father is the gardener. Okay? Every branch in me that does not produce fruit, He removes and he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit. Everybody know how does this work? Muscadine vines. You ever been around muscadine vines? If you get a vine that doesn't produce fruit, it's never going to produce fruit. So lop it off, okay? But everyone that does, you trim back. My dad taught me how to do this when I was young. You trim back the third knuckle from the vine, okay, and that'll cause that branch to make more fruit the next year. Sometimes a lot more. Just depends on the year, I think, more than anything. And so what Jesus is describing here is that I'm producing a crop, and my Father's going to make sure that it's a good crop. All right, so the Father and the Son again, we find together in these passages. Jesus is totally, he's really dependent upon what the Father is going to do with this vine that he is producing. Okay, so there's this great oneness that exists with the Father and the Son. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I in you. So what he's saying, what has pruned you? What has pruned you to allow you to bear more fruit? What is it? The words that I've spoken to you. Okay, so the teachings of Jesus are vital if we're going to be healthy and strong as a producer of fruit. Then we've got to give the attention to the word. Okay. Remain in me and I in you means abide is another word that's there. You remain attached, okay, together. Just as a branch is unable to produce fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me or abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. Now in John chapter 5 and in John chapter 12, Jesus teaches two different things about how this works for him. In John chapter 5, he says that I don't do anything unless I see my Father in heaven do it. So there's this revelation that comes from God that Jesus completes and follows perfectly. Later in 12, he says, everything I say because I've heard my Father first say it. So he receives a revelation from God perfectly, and he reveals it again perfectly. And now he is saying, you are going to be attached to me and abide in me, and you are going to produce the kind of fruit that only I can produce through you. Otherwise, you won't produce any fruit. This is pretty easy to understand, right? But he adds there much fruit. And then he says, because you can't do it without me. So Jesus again in this, and this is not the first time that he's used an adjective or an adverb that provides volume to what he's doing, extravagance. He says you're gonna bear much fruit. There's going to be an extravagance about this that only can occur with me. All right? If anyone does not remain in me, he is thrown aside like a branch, and he withers. They gather them, throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. We're going to stop there for just a little bit. This passage gives us problems. Okay? What does it say? If anyone does not remain in me, what happens? He is thrown aside like a branch, and he withers. Okay? So he's lopped off. He doesn't produce anymore. So this always comes to the place of trying to figure out, okay, can you lose your salvation? Okay. And this doesn't have a lot to say about salvation. You cannot lose your salvation. Okay? That comes as a promise from Christ. Our effectiveness in bearing fruit is what he's describing here. Now, we're known by our fruit. Okay? So we want to bear fruit. But our effectiveness in doing so has everything to do with us remaining or abiding in the vine. Does this make sense? Yeah. So we have it's an opportunity.
Is this really back to like cardinal Christianity? Like that belief like there's Christians, but they're not producing any fruit, but they still have the promise of salvation. And there's like, we would call it practicing Christians who are on the line.
Yeah, these are not easy answers, really. Who determines salvation? Christ does. He seeks and he saves the lost. That's what he's come to do. So how well we follow doesn't determine how well he saves. We've talked about all this before in other sections that have gone before us here.
But it's also because he's not able to use us because we're not behaving in a way that he could.
Well, the question becomes here is, how useful is it? How useful do you want to be? I think that's where Jesus is getting to. There's a new vine. You're going to attach yourself to the vine. How useful are you going to be in producing the fruit that this vine is wanting to produce? It's kind of where all this is bundled up at. It's our effectiveness as believers. Okay, it's not about losing your salvation. But if you do a terrible job, inconsequential job, you don't even care about it, which is what withering is, then why? What good are you at that point? So it is easy to say, rightfully, that you wither and you fall away.
And I know with myself because I had a 3-year stint after being in church for like 10 or 12 years that I fell away for like 3 years. And when you talk about the fire, it felt like I was in the fire.
Okay.
I mean, I had a guy try to murder me. I had numerous fights and just all kind of things, just people attacking me. And I didn't even know what was going on with the sober recovery, but I didn't realize you're not living as a Christian. You have everything you need right in front of you, but you're ignoring it all and you're expecting a blessing from God.
Yeah, it's all fruitless.
Yeah,
There's
you're
nothing
expecting
about
a
it that
blessing.
can produce anything.
You provided nothing for him after he gave you everything.
Yeah.
And you expect blessings on this?
Yeah.
And then after that, I just called back and said, sorry.
So is he making reference to, at the end, you're going to be, when he comes back, you're going to be thrown in the fire there?
Mm-mm.
No, he's
No.
not doing that?
This is the equivalent, okay? You're useless. You're done. You're of no use to God. Might as well be like the vine they throw in the fire, okay? But just like Lee just said, the promise is there. We can always go back to the promise because it's always there. The promise is the cross of Christ. It never is. That place in history never changes, ever. That moment in history is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Does that help?
It's kind of like the guy who keeps getting in arguments at work all the time, so they send him to a psychiatrist. He waits in the
Don't be
waiting-
confessing. I'm just picking.
But he waits in the waiting room and he goes into the psychiatrist and the psychiatrist says, "How can I help you?" He says, "Well, I seem to have trouble making friends. You overpriced hack."
Yeah, that would be bad.
And I mean,
That's good.
So the idea is we remain attached to the vine and we produce fruit. The negative side of this is something that you're avoiding. It's not a thing that describes life as much as it is something that we avoid in life. We want to remain. Okay?
It's kind of a hard like attached to something, when a lot of times we drift and we feel like we're not attached. And then we get back to our prayer time and, oh, now I'm attached. So it kind of messes with.
Yeah.
sometimes,
Now, could it be that we're the vine that gets pruned? I've heard this passage used so many different ways in sermons. I've heard it applied to the church. I've heard it applied to individuals. I've heard it applied to not just the church, but the church universal. So, could it be that what Jesus is describing is that you're the one that has to be pruned back to the place that you bear good fruit?
relate more to that.
That's all I've ever heard of down there. I've never
Yeah.
heard any different.
Before I speak out of turn, let me... I don't want to... Let's see. Nah, it's not right. I was going to see... I can't recall if it's wrong. You. So it's plural. The you is. So he's talking to this group collectively. So he could be referring to just you all being treated this way. It doesn't have to be that it's the group that he's trying to clean up collectively. It's each one of them. Does that help? Let's see. I lost my place now.
27, I
If anyone does not remain in me, okay, and so then he goes on. So ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. So this isn't I'm going to ask for the Lamborghini so I can have the Lamborghini type argument, okay? This is what often people that aren't paying attention to the context here. What would you, in the context of this passage, what do you think you would be asking for? Bear fruit. Yeah, you want to bear fruit. That's what you're asking for. So if you ask, and if my words remain in you, ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. So in the context, it's fruit. But if my words remain in you, it would refer to what? Anything that Jesus has been teaching you. Later this becomes important, because in the Great Commission, what does he say? There you go. So later on, this is instilled in you. Everything that Jesus has taught is to be offered to others, not just as information, but they're to learn to live it. Everything that I've commanded you to do, or to observe what I'm doing. So this is an additional step in what he's been encouraging him all the time, all the while. You remain in me, you're going to bear fruit. The fruit is determined largely upon the way that you receive my words and put them to use in your life, because those words are going to be the very words that allow you to produce fruit in others. Yeah. My Father is glorified by this. And here's that theme again about glory. What is our purpose? Bring glory to the Father. That's right. So how does that happen? It happens by the way we live, but also by the way we present Jesus in the world. Because he is Christ. He's the glory of God. Okay? So, my Father is glorified by this, that you produce much fruit and prove to be my disciples. Okay. As the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Pretty powerful statement there. We just kind of run by that in the midst of all this other thing. As my Father has loved me, so I have loved you. So the expression of the Father's love for Jesus as he's been on earth has been immense. Okay, and so that's what the disciples have been able to observe and to understand. And this should have given them great hope that this is the kind of relationship that we're going to share with Jesus from now on. Only they haven't gotten it in their head yet, and neither would most of us, that this involves dying and being raised from the dead and ascending back to the Father. But this is a promise that he's making. As my Father has loved me, so I also loved you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept the Father's commands and remained in his love. Birds of a feather. Okay? You do this like I did it. Takes all the thinking out of it, right? We don't have to make any moral judgment or ethical judgment or judgment calls at all here. We're just going to do it like Jesus did it. And when that happens, we remain in his love. Now, we always remain in his love. It's the experience of it. Just because something is doesn't mean it has the kind of value if we are willing and allowing it to become experiential in our life, something that we live by, a code, an ethic, all of those things that we describe. I have told you these things so that my joy may be complete in you and your joy may be complete, period. All right, so Jesus is establishing here, there's something wonderful about this whole exercise that I'm describing here. This brings great joy to me. Now that's pretty cool because we think a lot about being obedient to Christ, which we should, and other things. Do you think a lot about bringing joy to him? It's not on my radar every day. It's not one of the things that I think about every day. But we bring joy to him, okay, by living the way that he has shared with us. I have told you these things, which are all directions of life, aspects of life in following him. I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. You're not ever going to be satisfied as one of mine until you completely get a hold of this. Then your joy will be complete. Now that way I think we can all recognize. We've all been with Jesus halfway. You know, we've stepped in the water with one foot. We've done all of those things, and we really haven't experienced the depth and breadth of joy that comes from the Christian life until we finally do. Then we realize we don't want anything else. It's exactly what Jesus is talking about all the way through up to the first verse. So one of the things that Paul talks about in his letters is that joy becomes one of those markers in our Christian faith. If we are experiencing the depth of joy that is available to us, we know we're on the right track. There's two words that Paul uses. One is joy and the other is peace. So we become, when we talk about peace, what does that mean? Whole. It's a wholeness of life. It's a goodness of life. When Jesus said, I've come so you may have life and have it to the full. All of these concepts that run really from the Old Testament on through are to help us understand help us to understand when this has finally taken the place that it should in our life. So the Christian life may be a struggle, but it's going to be a joyous struggle. Okay? There's going to be disappointments along the way, but as the song says, joy comes in the morning. It's always there. It's on the horizon. It's constantly our friend and our companion.
The dichotomy between being pruned and being joyful about it.
Well, You know, and there's something about that. It's not the same. I know, but it's going to be a terrible illustration. But I remember thinking this one time. You know how it is to get your hair cut and how good it feels? Yeah, you do. See, it's the same thing. You just feel so good. You just want to take the day off and enjoy your haircut. Yeah. That's kind of the way yeah, Steve, next time you go to get your hair cut, you're going to be thinking about this.
It takes about 3 hours, but she's got to talk when she cuts.
Well, see, it really will be a joyous
That's the only
experience.
reason I go there. I mean, I get a haircut anyway.
This is the way when we really have those moments in Christ where we just can't really contain. I don't mean verbally and that kind of thing. It's this experience with Him because we're attached. Man, we are abiding with Him. And in the what may seem to be the worst moment, we know that fruit's going to be on the other side of it because it can't happen any other way. It's the way that it is with Jesus.
This too shall pass.
Yeah.
And then you know when it passes, you're going to have the joy.
Yeah.
It does.
I mean, I shouldn't say this. Maybe, I don't know. Brother Jimmy, you play golf?
Used to.
Okay, that's my kind of golfer right there. Some of these preachers, they get joy out of playing golf. They play as much as they can play. I wouldn't know which end of a golf club to pick up. So I don't know anything about it. Okay? It's good. You can find joy in that, and you can find joy going to the jail and sitting for an hour and a half and visiting with a bunch of guys. God's He wants us to be joyous in everything that we do. Because all of it is bearing fruit in our life in some sort of way. I pick about golf, but there's a lot of good things that happen with preachers on a golf course. A lot of good things come out of that. So whatever it is, it's meant to bear fruit and to make joy complete. Then he goes on and says, this is my command, love one another as I have loved you. We read past this one too pretty quick because we know that's what we're supposed to do. They haven't yet been to the cross. So when he's teaching them this, he knows that, but he knows that becomes a part of the equation for their life. If they're going to love one another the way that he loves them, it is going to be an all-out sacrificial gift that they've never had to imagine giving before, the way that they're going to experience it with him on the cross. And Jesus knows they must experience that kind of love and offer it to one another if the gospel is going to do anything in the world. And so this is what he's doing. Imagine you sitting there or walking with him. And you're the first to hear it, and you're going to be the first to do it. This is my command, love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants anymore, because servants do not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends, because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. So, there's no greater love than this, to lay down his life for his friends. Jesus is on his way to demonstrating the greatest love that there is. There's no greater love than this. Okay. He has just said that love one another the way I love you. So he's up the ante a little bit here. Okay? This is a life-giving love. Now he knows that they're all going to end up being martyrs for the faith, but that's something different here. That's the fact of life, that they're going to lay down their life. But what he is describing for us, we would never, ever have to imagine laying down our life for the faith of another in this space. Now, they do it in other countries all the time. This passage is, you can't nail it down. What does it mean?
So, and I'm just gonna ask this because that's like our soldiers go to war. They're laying in their life for our country.
Yeah.
And I had a guy tell me there was only one way to get to heaven, and that's what he tried to tell me. He was a service guy. He says to lay your life down for another human being.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, my response to him was, I said, no, that means you love. But I'm not sure that's the way to get to heaven.
You're exactly right.
But, you know, and this is the first time I've ever seen it, because I never read that part until
Yeah.
you said that.
Yeah.
But that's what he kept, this must be what he was referring to, some part of this. He was
Yeah.
extracting, saying that was the only way.
He was right by half.
He's the lay your life, because he was talking about, you know, stuff, everybody, you know, these doomsday preppers think something's fixing to happen, and
Yeah.
they're gonna protect you and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and that's what he said, that's what he was wording for.
Now, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. There's no one going to the Father but through him. And this is instruction for how we live. Okay? We expect, as we offer love to one another, that it's going to be costly. Now, in some countries today, people die for their faith, and people will die for others in place of them for their faith. We've never will that be asked of us, but we are asked, what will you do sacrificially to show your love to another? And we have to answer that question if we're going to be honest about the rest of this, that we're going to love one another. Then we have to establish for ourselves, what's the sacrificial end of that I'm willing to do? And sometimes we don't know what that is until we get in the midst of something.
It seems easier to lay down your life for the person you know and love than for Christ, who you don't see every day. I mean, it has to be a real commitment to Christ and to the belief that he is, and that he is leading you every day, and he's your shepherd, to where I'm so sure of this, I'm going to lay down myself for this person I love, who I don't even see, as opposed to my wife, who I see and love.
Well, in this, Jesus is saying that the love that is mine, that is in you, will be offered to another sacrificially. You lay down your life for. So, there's someone in your life that is in great need. And you realize you're in the midst of it, and you realize that this is going to require more of me than I've ever imagined. This is going to require more of me and my family than I've ever anticipated it being. But I'm in it. And I'm in it because of the love of Christ. I'm in it. Okay, so now, what do? Well, Jesus didn't back out of his sacrifice at any way. He didn't take a step back at all. In fact, in Luke it says that he set his face toward Jerusalem. He wasn't going to back down from it. And so we find ourselves in that place where we've offered the love of Christ, and now we got to go. Now, there's times when you look at the church and say, y'all got to come with me. You know, we do that. You know, that's what the church is here for. But there are times when because the love of Christ is involved. Once we let our own motivations and our own limited love come into play, we can easily back out of that because we can only go so far under our own. But he's here telling us that this is how we love. This is the difference now. Does this make sense? And then he goes on to say, you who are my friends, if you do what I command. You are my friends if you do what I command you. So he sets some parameters here. Okay? Those of you who are with me. So it's a tricky situation. We use these passages to speak of everyone, the whole world. We're going to love the whole world this way. But it seems to not allow for that just yet. Okay, we find that in other places. But this is really a way of keeping the church strong. A weak church, or a church that is weak in the world, what about it? Well, we've seen that in our lifetime. We've seen the importance of church even diminish amongst church people that attend church, that claim Christianity. Okay, so those folks need sacrificial love in their life as much as anybody. They're hurting. Somewhere in their life, they're hurting. How do you become a part of a healthy, loving fellowship and then decide that can't be important at all anymore? I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to wake up Sunday mornings and watch I Love Lucy in my underwear and eat Fruit Loops. I mean, how did we come to that? And so we see it happening, and so then those of us that are healthy, the way it's described in Hebrews and other places, we've got to respond and help in those times.
So can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's see how I can put this. So, when your walk with the Lord is right, you're close. At least I'm going to speak for me. I'm convicted if I even speak out of turn or step off the wrong way. So if you're decide I'm going to stay home and eat Fruit Loops in my underwear and watch I Love Lucy, if you're not being convicted about that, then you better check up, or you've gotten too far over there.
Well, yeah, but how quickly do we drift away? We don't drift. We find the current and we get out of town.
Well, the world drags you. I mean, there's so much it tries.
Yeah.
It's trying to get you high.
So two things happen at that point. This is okay. One is you cry for help. My boat's lost its moorings and I'm on my way out to sea. I need some help. Okay, we rarely ever do that. Okay. Then the other option is someone or a group of somebodies or the whole congregation looks up and says, man, something is not right. Our friend has lost their moorings. They've lost their way. So what do? You don't go have an intervention like they do on TV. Everybody gets gathered up in their house one night and sets them down on the sofa and says, we got some things to talk about. No. But you ask them for dinner at your house one night. You remind them of what the love of the church is. You remind them of what fellowship is. You may even address it directly if you feel like you can do that sort of thing. You do some things that are going to be costly out of your regular routine, away from the normal substance of life. Whatever it is, you're willing to kind of move away from those things in order to get in this space with this person to bring them back to the love of Christ. We're kind of off track, but this is the way church is to work anyway. Really, if you're here one day and gone the next and nobody really cares, what are we doing? It says you're going to be known by my love that is in you. And I don't know if that's what Jesus would have done. Unless it's like the rich young ruler or somebody where they've already made up their minds that there's nothing about this life with Jesus that they want any part of, and they walk away with their heads hung low because they don't want to give up what is feeding their ego or fantasies in their life, whatever that may be. But you know when people do that. We've had families leave here and come up with all kind of reasons why they left, and never say that the reason why they left is so that their kids could play ball on Sundays, not have to worry about coming to church. You could look in that much of their life and figure it out. I mean, you'd have to be okay. So you go and you say and you visit and you talk and you try to be the loving person that says, we miss y'all and we love you and want you back and really hope to see you kids in Sunday school. We do all of those things, and it just goes, okay. That's when he gets to this part where he's talking about my commands. You are my friends if you do what I command. So this is how we know Jesus is doing this to keep strong. But if you're not following his command, and is there a direct written words out of Jesus' mouth that says, go to church and stay in church? I wish there would have been. It would make everybody's life easier, you know. But we know from Acts 2:42 and passages in, I don't remember what chapter, Hebrews 10, 11, 10?
I think it's 10.
I forget. But he's talking about meeting together. The first part of Acts is all about what the church was when they were together, and there was nothing like it described anywhere else in Scripture. I mean, all of this is because they were just doing what Jesus asked them. They were under the apostles' teaching. They were breaking bread, remembering what he'd done every day, meeting together. All of this was happening together. So I don't want to get slowed down too much. I do not call you servants anymore, because the servant does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I have made known to you everything I've heard from my Father. You're friends. Why? How do you become a friend of Jesus? You listen. Because I have made known to you everything that I've heard from my Father. That's how we're his friend. I take this quite literally. The way that we know that we're friends with Jesus is because we're in prayer, receiving from him the things that we know the Father wants us to have. It only comes from him.
And the Father is what? He is the Master.
Yeah.
So Jesus is here to work with us, and the Master, it's all laid out when you get to him, but Jesus is here to work with us, to be the teacher.
The other wonderful thing about it is, he says, I'm not hiding anything, because I have made known to you everything I have heard from my Father. So everything that I know, you know. That ought to be great confidence in that. There's no mystery in the revelation. Jesus has already revealed it. Everything that we know in order to be his friend, we have. We have received it through his word. You did not choose me, but I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce fruit. We're back to that. And that your fruit should remain or abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. Same thing I was saying before, about whatever we ask in Jesus' name, the Father's name, it all relates back to God's will and how we are to bear fruit. So let's just stop there for a minute. We ask God for a lot of things, usually to get better. There's something ailing us and we want to be better. Okay? How often do you ask about being a better fruit bearer? In whatever language you want to use to say that to him. Because I'm sure that he would like to know that you're interested in bearing fruit the way that he's made all this possible for you to bear fruit. If you never ask him about it, it's just kind of proof that you're not really that interested. We ask God about the things that are important to us. And sometimes we get so involved in the things that are prickly, the things that are bothering us, the things that are causing us grief and pain and sorrow and suffering and uncertainty and all that, that we forget about the fact that, wait a minute, I'm not here just to be fixed from all of that. I'm here to bear fruit. And maybe I'm not doing a very good job, come to think of it, when was the last time I bore any fruit? I saw a scary statistic this week. 3% of churchgoers have shared the gospel one time in their life. Yeah.
3%?
I was surprised by the number. I'd like to know how they came to that number. That would take 3%. And it didn't say what all traditions were included into that.
If you look at the end of like ministry reports for Jensen,
I know it's,
a much better number.
well, I think in Baptist circles it's got to be better. But I think this includes
All of the,
the Catholic, universal, everybody. Yeah.
That makes better sense.
Well, it doesn't make it better, y'all. It doesn't make it better just because Baptists are doing somewhat of a better job than everybody else. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we want to be able to bear fruit. All right. It says it gets back to there's some intermittent passages here that kind of work like a chiastic structure, which we won't go into tonight. But this is what I command you, to love one another. If the world hates you, understand that it hated me before you. Okay? Or before it hated you. So we've already established the fact that we are already receiving the love that He has for us. It's the same as what He's received from the Father. And that we're to offer that sacrificially to one another. And then He says, yeah, and by the way, all the hate that is directed toward me, it's going to come to you. If you're experiencing this rejection by the world, it's because they hated or rejected me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. It's all kind of good stuff here. Okay? Very early on, in fact, before the church even gets going good, they experience this kind of hatred from the temple leaders and religious leaders. And it follows them all over the world, and they're persecuted, and ultimately that becomes a part of the governmental persecution that Rome undertakes against them. And then it never really quits after that in history. There's always a group somewhere in the world where Christianity is spreading that is against them and hates them. Okay? And Jesus says, don't get it in your mind that that's all about you. It's really all about me. They're hating me and everything that I am. And because you believe in me and are mine, they're going to hate you too. If you're loved by them, you've made a big mistake. Okay? Because you're really not living and producing the fruit that we've been talking about here. So this becomes, this passage maybe becomes more real today than it may have ever been in your life, because we are in a period of history, although I think we're beginning to ease our way out of it, where the world has had, to make it kind, they've had a pretty sorry attitude toward Jesus. They've asked Him to leave the room and to not come back. And so the result of that is they want us gone too. And we've got all kind of reasons why that is. Mainly because we want to live like Jesus, and the world wants to live like whatever. They don't even know how to define what they want to live like. So lack of definition is more attractive to them than Jesus is, and everything that He is and represents and is for us. And so in that process, when the truth of the gospel is presented, it makes people angry because it interferes with their life. And it always amazes me that's what they want until something goes wrong. And then they're looking for anybody that'll show up to help them. Anyone, it doesn't matter who. And it's usually those rascally Christians that show up and help.
Brother Mark,
Yeah.
I have a question, and it's just, I'm reading it, and it just keeps coming back. So what day, this is a couple of days before he goes to the cross.
The night before.
Okay, so, and help me understand this, and right here it says, "No longer do I call you my servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing."
Right.
It says, "But I have called you friends, for all things I've heard from my Father have been made
Known to you. That's right.
So he hadn't told him he's being crucified yet.
Oh, no, he's told them.
Oh, he's told him?
He's told them at least 3 times.
Okay,
Maybe, probably 4, counting. Yeah, so they know, they just don't believe it.
okay.
It just doesn't add up to anything that,
I was like, wait.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, he's told them. And,
I don't know why.
yeah, and every time that he tells them, well, not every time, the last time, but the other times they just kind of sit there dumbfounded like, what is this guy talking about? They can't make, there's no sense to be made of it because of everything they knew the Messiah was going to be. The Messiah would show up, and he was going to be a military conqueror that would conquer the Romans and sit on a throne forever, the throne of David forever. And they've been believing this for 6 centuries or longer maybe.
He just thought it was going to be a physical being that was going to do it.
Yeah, and Jesus comes and from the very beginning is showing them that this is not what this is about. You are not looking deep enough into what God is and has been and what he intends to be with you. And an earthly Messiah would have been the ultimate sellout. There would have been nothing consequential at all, even if that Messiah had reigned forever. If he was still sitting on the throne 2,000 years later, it would be an inconsequential reign on this earth. Wouldn't have mattered. The only way any of this mattered is that God makes a way to bring us all home to him. That's it. You can't do that staying here. You know why? This thing's burning up. We don't want to be here. We want to be there. And then when the new heaven and new earth is presented, we're going to be there. Yeah. Okay. However, because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of it, the world hates you. Remember the word I spoke to you. A servant is not greater than his master. He had just said that in the upper room. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But they will do all these things to you on account of my name, because they do not know the one who sent me. This all goes back to an understanding. Where did Jesus come from? They asked him this before, and they're going to ask him again. Okay? And he's telling them, the one who sent me, you know good and well who sent me. Yahweh, who I call Father, and who I am now teaching you to call Father. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. Now they have no excuse for their sin. So the sin problem's been laid wide open because Jesus has come and he has taught us what he has taught us. He's saying, look, if I'd have never come, you can't condemn a person for them not knowing what they've done. But now the case has been made, and the case is clear. This is what I've come for. The one who hates me also hates my Father. Is this ringing a bell? We went through this whole thing earlier in another discourse where Jesus is addressing the Pharisees and the temple leaders. And so he's saying it again to remind his disciples that this is part of what's going on. We've got all of this love language that is a part of your life, and now we've got all this hate language as a part of the life. If I had not done the works among them that no one else has done, they would not be guilty of sin. Now they have seen and hated both me and my Father. But this happened so that the statement written in their law might be fulfilled. They hated me for no reason. Okay? If you don't believe it, it's written down in Scripture. He also ties the truth of who he is to the works that he performs. His works were not some parlor trick to get people's attention. It is the essence of the Messiah, to come and to heal and to restore and to make whole. And he's saying anyone that sees this for what it is would know who I am. But because they hated me, they can't see a thing. They're blind. What did he say about blind guides? That's who they are. When the counselor comes, the one I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father. This is familiar in chapter 14. He's repeating these words. He will testify about me. So the Spirit is going to testify about Jesus. You will also testify because you have been with me from the beginning. So he's saying is, when the time comes, the Spirit's going to be at work. Okay? He's going to be stirring up in the hearts of people that need to hear, and you're going to be stirring up the hearts of those that need to hear. It's kind of laying out the battle plan. This is how it's going to work. You also will testify because you have been with me from the beginning. I have told you these things to keep you from stumbling. They will ban you from the synagogues. In fact, a time is coming when anyone who kills you will think he is offering service to God. So he's explaining all of this so that they understand that don't let these things cause you to stumble. It's not unlike what the writer of Hebrews is telling his readers. Don't let this persecution cause you to fall away and to leave the faith. Okay? Don't let it cause you to stumble. They're going to do these things to you. Okay? And even if they kill you, they're going to think they're doing God a favor. So total confusion on the part of these people that have yet to see the truth that is in Jesus. They will do these things because they haven't known the Father or me. But I have told you these things so that when their time comes, you will remember I told them to you. So Jesus, again, we started out at the beginning when he was coming into Jerusalem, riding the donkey. We find that Jesus has set the stage for everything. He's in total control. He told them where to go to get the donkey. He later tells them exactly what to do in the upper room. And now he's telling them exactly how this history is going to unfold so that there's no surprises. With Jesus, when we're listening to him, when we're following him, when we're paying attention, we don't have a lot of surprises. He's laid it out there. There's some, but not a lot. He is looking for us to rely on him like he relied on the Father. I didn't tell you these things from the beginning because I was with you. But now I'm going away to him who sent me, and not one of you asked me, where are you going? Yet because I've spoken these things to you, sorrow has filled your heart. So he tells them he's going. Nobody's asked where he's going, but they're full of sorrow. Nevertheless, I'm telling you the truth. It is for your benefit that I go away, because if I don't go away, the counselor will not come to you. If I go, I will send him to you. Okay? This one that is also going to bear testimony about Jesus, he is also one that's going to give counsel to his followers. They're not going to have to wring their hands and worry and think, what do I do next? He's already said you don't have to worry about what you're going to say next. All of this is happening because when he leaves, the Spirit comes. If I go, I will send him to you. When he comes, He will convict the world about sin, righteousness, and judgment. I love this passage. Okay. So we already know, before the Spirit ever gets here, we have three broad areas of work that he's doing. He's convicting the world about sin, about the idea of righteousness and what that is, and about judgment. And then he goes on to say, about sin, because they do not believe in me. It is like sin, or the propagation of sin, is the result of not believing in me. Sin either keeps you from it, or it is a thing that propagates from the result of not believing. Okay? About righteousness, because I am going to the Father. All righteousness rests in God, has its place with God. If righteousness is with God and Christ returns to the Father, he's returning in righteousness. Because I am going to the Father, and you will no longer see me, and about judgment, because the ruler of this world has been judged. Who's the ruler of this world? Satan, the great accuser, the one that hopes to stand before God and accuse all of us about how terrible we are as followers, and accusing Jesus of not being a proper Messiah, and all these various things that arise out of that idea. But Jesus is saying he's judged already. Once you are judged, what are you then? Condemned. Yeah, ask anybody in jail. Once you're judged, you're done. There's nothing else to talk about. Okay? Once he's judged, okay, it's winding down time now. Okay? I still have many things to tell you, but you can't bear them now. So he's not going to hide anything. It's just that their wagon is overloaded right now. It's too much to deal with. When the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth. Everything you will ever need to know about any of this and me, he's going to show you. I would imagine that this was overload right now. Everything that they've been listening to, and everything that's kind of having to erase the tape of your whole adult life, of everything that you've known, and rewrite over it everything that Jesus is saying, and listen to it for the first time all the way through. It's just too much. But the Spirit is going to be one that counsels, meaning that he comes alongside. The Spirit comes alongside us and stays with us and becomes our counselor. For he will not speak on his own, but he will speak whatever he hears. Same thing as Jesus. He will also declare to you what is to come. He will glorify me, because he will take from what is mine and declare it to you. Everything the Father has is mine. This is why I told you that he takes from what is mine. I think, what time is it? Oh, God, we got to stop. I'm sorry. The kids will be out in a minute. And we're going to back up. What verse am I on? Because it don't have the numbers on it. Of chapter 16, right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I didn't set my alarm tonight. Any comments about any of that? I've been talking a lot. Nothing?
You explained it very well.
Do I get an A tonight?
A plus.
I was gonna say, do I get the gold star for answering your questions?
Give me my gold star, teacher.
Bye. Yeah, you get a gold star. Well,
I mean, that's a lot for them to have to deal with. They've been with him 3 years, thinking that they're going to be with